Yeah.
So I identify as this is a work session of the Woodland Park Planning Commission, Thursday, July 9th, 2026 at 7:08 PM.
And just for the record, in attendance, we have Chair Lee Brown, Vice Chair Ken Kennedy, Joe Fury, Ken Hartsfield via Zoom, Don Hoyne, Jared Newcomb, Karen Schmink, the Planning Director, and Grant Ottai, our permit technician, handling our AV for us this evening. So yes, this item is a follow-up from your last work session where we were reviewing potential future updates. And yeah, Ken Hartsfield, are you in a place where I can send you an email that you would see that, or no?
Um, Give it a shot.
Okay.
No, I can get onto that. I just, yeah, go ahead and send that.
Okay. Um, my apologies.
While you're doing that, Karen, I would like to just make a request that when we do have handouts, if you could email them as well as providing them in paper form. It just makes it easier for me to attach them to my computer record of the meeting that I do use sometimes to go back and look at information in the past. And it's helpful to have all the handouts from previous meetings. If you wouldn't mind
Okay.
joint emailing them to everybody at some point after the meeting is fine or whenever.
We can do that. Oops. Wrong spot. Okay. So what I have in front of you all oops, that's not what I wanted to share. What I distributed to you guys is the same handout that you had at the last work session, where I asked you guys to rank on a scale of 1 to 5, your level of priority for each of those potential future updates. And so the first 2 pages, those items appear in the same order as they did on the page that you were ranking. And then the second 2 pages, I put them in numerical order so that you could see. And I'm on what I'm sharing on the screen, I'm going to go to where they're in numerical order. So with this, the ranking was 1 was a low priority, 5 was a high priority. And we had added a couple of things to that list. And so those are incorporated here. The 2 primary ones that were added were, definition or explanation of what is a detailed verifiable water supply plan. And then the second one was that transition area between central business district and residential zones. So how this worked in terms of rankings, and I did have somebody say something was a 10, we put it as 5.
I knew you would, but.
Just so that we're working with the same ranking system. And then I had a couple things where folks didn't provide a ranking, so it was averaged based on the number of, so if 3 people supplied something, and they were all 4s, you divide it by 3, so we just, based on the number of responses given is how it was ranked. So zeros did not count against something, I guess is the point I'm making. And so the highest one was that needing further discussion and revision regarding that area between like central business district and residential zones. Is there some other transition, or is there some other finessing that needs to happen? And I think we will be getting some guidance out of the sub area plan we want to do in and around the downtown area, since that's the area in question. The next highest one was to define, that detailed verifiable water supply. And then after that, kind of ties into that first one where we're looking at residential uses in commercial zone districts, and then also accessory dwelling units. Those kind of go hand in hand. It is a little intriguing to me that in most of our commercial zones, where someone is able to cite a single family home or a duplex in those zone districts, it really does kind of undermine the intent of the commercial zones. But that is, what the use tables looked like for a very long time. And since our code update was definitely restructuring, we carried that forward. The next one is to add data centers in the use table and use standards. As I've mentioned previously, there is a moratorium ordinance on siting data centers in Woodland Park that's gone through first reading. City Council will be holding a public hearing on that ordinance next Thursday. And again, that's a moratorium on siting that type of use in Woodland Park. So it does have it'll have a finite time period to it. And what that does is it allows the city time to, look at this and develop the rules that we'd like to see around these, and where, if anywhere, we want to permit these without worrying about somebody having one in progress here. The next item was the architectural design guidelines, those potentially needing to be reviewed, maybe updated, definitely looked at through the lens of the wildland urban interface impacts. After that was clarification around manufactured modular tiny home and the locations where those are permitted. I think what we've got works for Woodland Park, but it's an issue of it's non-compliant with state law. The next item, what was a 3.4, was outdoor storage metrics, needing some additional review, maybe some additional screening standards, more exacting details, since that 2,000 square feet really seems to be a small area for contractor storage of materials and supplies. After that is needing to add emergency services facility to the use table and use standards. Getting a definition for that use, and then making sure it corresponds with where and how it should be permitted in our various zones. And these are for things like fire and police, ambulance. Interestingly enough, after looking at the use table here this evening, ambulance has its own category, but fire and police do not. So that's something that really should be addressed and filled in. The next item on the list was at a 3 point, there's a couple of them here at 3.2, was the lighting, the exterior lighting, and a possible dark sky type regulations. After that was updating our parking metrics, number of spaces for different types of uses, parking lot design requirements. And then also at that same level of ranking was to add power sports dealers to the use table and use standards. Next, ranking at a 3.0, we have developed regulations regarding using Connex containers for storage, And then needing to update and revisit our landscaping standards, and really addressing, water-wise limitations. After that, at a 2.8 was driveway design requirements to prohibit parking on lawns and other vegetated areas with limitations, possibly requiring hard surfaces for single-family dwellings and duplexes. The next one is our overlay zone maps. Right now, they're embedded in the code. I believe it's in chapter 3. So having those shown more clearly as an overlay on our official zoning map. Because when you're looking for zone districts, that's really where you would look and not inside the code document itself. Next at 2.4 was the mobile home park regulations needing a full update. After that, updating our sign standards, needing to clean those up for federal compliance. Brought up in our discussion last time was also verifying brightness standards around those electronic message displays. So I'm pretty sure we've already got a standard in there, but I just wanted to make sure you guys knew that we heard your concerns, so I just listed it here. And then, as we noted, needing to do that review and potential cleanup regarding where special use permits are required. Those uses that typically require a special use permit are more larger scale, kind of community oriented, almost civic oriented. So it is things like hospitals, cemeteries, some of our infrastructure. So making sure that that really does align the way we want it to. That was one of those things where previously it had been just a list under the special use permit standards, and now we've integrated that into the use table. So that does really need a deeper dive to make sure that that's really how we want things to be. I mean, the use table reflects that list, but I think it's worthy of another review and thinking more strategically about that. After that, the last 2 items was to review park definitions and potentially update those. You may recall we have a really long list of different types of parks that we potentially don't need all of those. And then dead last, breaking my heart here, is the Woodland Park Engineering Specifications document, especially chapter 1, needing an update. And I know this is the part that you guys don't see and probably wouldn't have much of a role in. So this is really more just making you aware of other things that the planning office deals with. And so this is what happens after the subdivision gets approved. And we're really dealing with construction, financial guarantees, warranty periods, some of those kind of things, that how that's currently written is not helpful on several occasions and quite lacking. So it is very challenging at a staff level to work within the confines of how that's written these days. So anyhow, that's the list. That's the findings of all of your input from the last meeting. Other thoughts, discussion, concerns?
I'm sorry I wasn't there to participate. I really don't think the work was great. Just one comment. Would it be fair to say that the compliance with federal or any compliance with any state requirements would sort of trump our priority? I know this is our priority, but the one that said for sign standards having to comply with federal, wouldn't that kind of move that up the list?
Sign codes, and those of you who were here for that, they can be really challenging to work through and stuff. So it's potentially a very big, heavy lift. The biggest thing that came out of it's a federal Supreme Court case. I think it was 2012. It's called Reed v. Gilbert. And the bottom line is you cannot regulate content of the sign. So if your neighbor wants to put a sign in his front yard that says the king is a fink, he can, so long as it's allowed by our rules, he can do that. What we can control is the size and where it goes. So if he wants to put it up on the property line, but the rules say you gotta be 20 feet back, and he wants it to be 6 square feet and you can only have 2 square feet. You know, you can say the king is a fink, but it's 2 square feet and it's 20 feet back off your property line. So that's the kind of cleanup that needs to happen within the sign regulations. But anytime you crack those open, you potentially get down a bunch of other rabbit holes on things that aren't necessarily broken, don't need fixing. And to the point I was making there, it was 2012 when that was, that Supreme Court case came out. So we've been limping along for a while. So I don't know that it's on fire, but it does.
It would
need to-
depend on the federal requirement or the state requirement that we come up.
It
Okay.
does need to be dealt with. There are some other things statewide that should be dealt with. You may recall we looked at updating our accessory dwelling unit regulations to be completely compliant with the state, and city council pushed back on that. So we're not 100% compliant with the state on accessory dwelling units, but it's what works for Woodland Park.
Okay.
So.
Can we perhaps knock one off the list and have the PRAB take care of the parks definitions review?
Well, process-wise, they can look at that, but because it's in the Unified Development
Yeah.
Code, it still needs to come back to
Sure.
public hearings for
But I could start there.
you guys. Quite potentially, yes. And I'm sorry, Chair, you had a question?
Yeah, well, just the process to go through this. It's all very nice for us to express preferences here, of one sort or another, but major controlling factor would seem to be you and your hopefully larger staff.
Well,
We're
and the
not-
direction
this-
I get from the manager and the council too, but at least I can make sure they understand, well, planning commission's looked at this, they've been close to this. These are you guys' thoughts.
Like the
So-
process is gonna mean I would assume it means some proposed language you will generate. The staff will generate with perhaps outside assistance as well, maybe, if it's called for.
Mhm.
And then an analysis of pros and cons and impacts on something else. There's a fairly extensive amount of work and preparation in order to bring any one of these to us. We're not gonna draft it. I mean, we may have other impacts we think of, and that's good. That's why we're here. But I don't know. Some of these may be easy enough that you could slip it in other meetings. But we've got, I don't know how many of these things are there, 15 or 20 items?
I did not count them, but yeah, I respect what you're saying.
What do you envision as far as this? So you're gonna have, start building a selection of the, perhaps emphasizing those that are 4s and 3.5s or above. With some proposed package to present it. I mean,
Well, there's.
what can you do? What's your expectation?
Well, based on prior direction I've gotten from city council, and you guys attended that work session where we were talking about, that interface between neighborhood commercial, central business district, urban residential zones. And the direction is let's do a sub-area plan so we can evaluate, think about this, look at this.
And that
So-
made the top of the list. That's the number one.
So yeah, so the good news is that's an alignment. I've started doing research on putting together that RFP. But then of course I ended up being short-staffed, so it's a little bit of a stall point at the moment, but that's up there in terms of let's get this moving. And then the next one right after that, to define that detailed verifiable water supply plan. I've talked to the utility director about that already. I definitely want to get that taken care of because there's a limit to how many times I can talk about, well, what does this mean? So I'd really like to get that answered for you guys, especially since I can't in any great meaningful way right now. So I'm hopeful. Well, I don't know how long that'll take, but I'm going to keep nudging on that one on your behalf. Absolutely. And that's as far as I've gotten in the thought process on this, quite honestly. With regard to the engineering specs, last year I put in a budget request because we would definitely need a consultant to manage a lot of that. So I put in a budget request last year. It did not get funded. And I'm gonna keep putting in that budget request on an annual basis until it does get funded. It may or may not be this next year, but the need has not gone away is the point that I'll be continuing to make on that.
So I see some of these clearly fall into, yeah, the staff can do the research, make a reasoned recommendation. Then we can review it and kick the tires on it. Others, it's probably worth some serious discussion to help give the staff more concrete, specific guidance on which direction appears to be the favored direction.
Well, and there's some of them, may be able to get bundled together and done with an RFP and a consultant in terms of a targeted, type, project, because there's things here that probably do require some community input around design and what's acceptable and what's not. So that's a little bit different process than what we were doing the past 4 years on the restructuring of the Unified Development Code. So when you're into actually looking at standards and evaluating and what do we want things to look like, that's definitely, in my mind, an engagement process with the community to help provide that guidance that then gets translated into text and ultimately adopted as regulation.
Karen,
Yes, sir.
I don't know what overlay zone maps means.
What that is it's like an extra layer of rules specific to a particular area. So, oops, hang on here. The best example pertains to signage.
In the back of chapter 3. Example. So like if you want to have electronic message display, it has to fall within this overlay. They can't put it up, in some residential area.
For signs, and there's downtown.
The DDA is the other big one.
Yeah, there's the
two
Woodland
for-
Station overlay. Ironically, that's not embedded in the code. I can't remember if that's even on the official zoning map, but it's actually at the end of chapter 2 where we talk about overlay zone districts. And there's the Woodland Station overlay. And then there's a couple of them related to electronic message displays. And then a special downtown overlay district relating to signage also. And so Exhibit A, there is where the electronic message display overlay zone is. So it's that hashed area. So you can see the colors underneath. Those are the zone districts underneath. And then this hatched area says within those hatched areas, there's this additional layer of rules related to electronic message boards. And then there's another set of rules. It's further down here on that. Yeah, so there's a couple of maps that pertain to all that. Oh, and this is it's a special downtown overlay area, but it's the Woodland Station. No, I apologize. It may be a different overlay. Yeah, it's outside. The Woodland Station actually lands down here in the center where my mouse is. So this is a different area. So there's like a different layer of rules that go with those specific locations.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So what do we do now?
Well, I just this was more about feedback.
Okay.
I don't really need any other action from you guys. You nailed nailed it here at the end in terms of, well, this is nice, we've given our 2 cents, but now what really happens? So the good news is the top 2 priorities, you're gonna see being worked on. You know, and then.
Maybe the top 3 even.
Yeah, and because the third one really
Really.
kind of ties in with the first one. But after that, yeah, no, this is not a 1-year work plan. This is multiple kind of things, multiple years worth of work. But like I said, going forward, there's that opportunity to maybe bundle some of these things together. There is one that you're going to see in much, much shorter order, and that is the emergency services facility. Getting that use added to the use table, partly because the fire department is really wanting to put a training tower in out there. And this is one of those casualties of the code transition where it was previously classified as an essential service, the fire department. But, now that we've cleaned up that definition, essential service fire department does not fit in that definition. It really needs to be an emergency services use. So like I said, you'll see that probably before the end of the year here.
And perhaps move the ambulance services into that category as well.
We'll look at that in terms of does that need to fit in there? Should it be a one-off? It may get all bundled together, so. So that's all. I just mostly wanted to report back since I was asking you your thoughts. We may.
Look forward to scheduling some presentations with a recommendation and
It's going to be
analysis.
long and slow. And as we continue to work with the UDC or issues come up, we may identify, other things that need to go on that list. Because, like 12 months ago, data centers wouldn't have hit the radar the way they are these days. So.
On the residential zoning transition, has the council given any sort of targets on timelines for when they want to have that addressed?
No, and like I said, we ran into me being short-staffed to get the RFP done to solicit a consultant. So
We got guidance we had a work session with the city council and they said.
Step on it, and I'm
said
trying.
They want, subject to the fact that the new ordinance should get finished first.
We did.
And Stephanie did, and that has been finished, so we've been told that's next.
Yeah. Thank you. But yeah, and like I said, I would be a little further along on it if I hadn't lost a team member.
Right, sure.
So that's all I had, unless you've got other thoughts or questions.
Can I throw out a thought about data centers?
Sure.
Just for future use, isn't it really, it's not a data center, it's the impacts it causes with noise, water use, power use, stuff like that. It seems to me it would be better, instead of making rules about data centers, make rules about facilities that have those type of qualities.
We have in chapter 3, there's some of those types of parameters there: noise, odor, fumes, blights, those kind of things. But when you're talking about a specific use, what zone district should a data center be placed in? So you need to, that is part of what gets looked at, is like, where in our community do we want to potentially allow these? And then do we want special requirements associated with that? So water use is a great one, to require that a closed loop water system is part of any data center, as opposed to one that's, more evaporative and you end up putting hundreds of gallons of water into the air as a result. So if you have that standard in place associated with that use, that's part of what has to happen if one is potentially being located. So that's why you go through and develop rules and regulations, is to hopefully mitigate and have special standards or requirements in place that would give you the tools to mandate certain things around that potential use being located.
There being nothing further. Meeting adjourned.